We're humans.
I know, it's crazy. All right. Okay. Hi, my name is Denissa. I'm here on behalf of One People Toronto. Today we have the honor of speaking with Andrea Flores about mental health in the Indigenous community. Andrea, thank you for taking the time today to come and speak with us about this important topic. If you'd like, I'm going to give you this time to, share a little bit about yourself for our audience.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. Um, yeah, so I am from Mexico. I was born there, but I've been a Canadian citizen for a vast majority of my life. So I do identify with my indigenous roots from Mexico. So I would identify as Azteca. And what I do now is I work in the spiritual community. I have been able to kind of come to this conclusion that mental health and spirituality for me are so intertwined, and they really weave my identity. And so now I have gained the tools and the awareness to show up and kind of offer this for others. So I'm a meditation guide, yoga teacher. I work in the more kind of esoteric side of dealing with mental health. So that's
Oh,
kind of what I do. Yeah.
wow, that's a lot. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank
So
you.
with that being said, we are just going to head straight into our little interview. So of course, the first question is, since we're talking about mental health, have you ever dealt with any mental health struggles?
I have for sure, definitely. I feel like, to some capacity, a lot of us do have some challenge in a degree. It's just the way that we have been, I like to call it programmed through society and generationally. I feel like we've all kind of gotten that. But for sure, I have dealt with it since a very young age. But at that time, I didn't actually realize it was mental health. I just kind of, I thought that's just who I am, and everybody else is the same way. So it wasn't until probably like my early 20s where it was like, like, whoa, this is actually, I need to heal. This is a problem because it's not allowing me to step into my power. So yeah, I've definitely dealt with it for sure. Yeah.
Wow, that's really deep. So you explained you started to see more things. Can you kind of highlight what were some of the things that you started to see within yourself that kind of changed and you're like, okay, this is like a real issue. I really need to get, to the root of this and, start to heal.
Well, I'm going to be completely transparent for me, and this might be a little bit triggering. I realized I was an alcoholic. I was using, external things like alcohol to kind of cope and
Mhm.
escape and not be me and be with my thoughts and with myself. And so, it was that. It was really being aware that I was not living at the highest potential that I could, and I was living very I like to call it like clouded and really taken over by my depression. And it was simply because I was just consuming so much alcohol. And that really presented itself again in like my early 20s. I was in university and living this like fast go life. It really caught up to me, and I started getting panic attacks, but I didn't know what they were at the time. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm losing my breath. And it was happening more frequently. And yeah, it literally took my breath away. I don't know how
Wow.
else to say it. So yeah, it's a thing for sure. Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
thank you. Well, thank you so much for being so transparent with us. And I feel like some people might take that as weakness, but like I feel like it's showing so much strength when you're able to be as vulnerable as you are. So I thank you so much for sharing that with us for sure. With that being said, like when you started going through these struggles, were you able to, share it with your friends and your family, or was it just like, I can't really show this that much? Or even did your family and friends start to see different things that, you started to display?
I mean, the thing is, no one in my life was in therapy, or no one really talked about it. Like, it just really wasn't a topic of discussion. And I will say that as an immigrant, and the child of an immigrant, there was like this idea that it just doesn't affect us.
Mhm.
And that it only affects again, I don't want to disrespect anyone, but like white people, or it only kind of affects that um, part of society, and that for us that's just not a thing. We get
Yeah.
over it, we pray or whatever, and it
Yep.
somehow gets tied into something else. But it was easy when it got to be an issue.
Mhm.
It was to a point where everybody was like, oh, okay. Is exactly kind of what you just said, this idea that like, wow, Andrea's really vulnerable,
Mhm.
something's up.
Mhm.
And that really, it allowed me to be myself, and I was really appreciative of that. But anytime before then, it was not a topic of discussion, and again, I didn't even know, right? So
Yeah.
if we're not aware, it doesn't really exist, right, in our own minds.
Even though like you brought up a really good point, the fact that like, because I'm Jamaican too, so my parents are immigrants as well. So even me going through my personal struggles with mental health, I really couldn't even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that whole stigma, the silent stigma that, people that live it that are from like minorities, we're not allowed to show that side of ourselves because we have to live up to this idea that we have to be strong, because realistically throughout history we've been handed so many like, you know horrible things, and we've really been resilient. So
Yeah.
I feel like everyone is just like, what's this, or like, why are you guys,
Exactly.
yeah, like why are you guys reacting now, kind of thing. It's really weird. Also, like, do you feel like, so for me, I noticed that I start to see like a lot of trends. And like, of course, we live in a pop culture society where like trends is really like what drives everyone to do whatever they do.
Mhm.
Um, do you feel like there are a lot of social factors that influenced or like brought you to a place of like, this is affecting me too much, kind of thing?
Um, well, to be honest, when it really hit me, I was 27 years old when I finally decided to take this matter into my own hands.
Yeah.
And at that time, so this was 2017. So this was only like 4 years ago, 5 years
Yeah.
ago.
Wow.
And at that time it was like it was on a come up. Like more people were talking about it. Like Kid Cudi had come out with a new album talking about his mental health. Like things were kind of happening and bubbling. And at
Hmm.
that time, I just felt like it's time I just put a name on it. If I can
Yeah.
just put a name on it, I can embrace it, and it can give me something to like look at, like make it more real.
Yeah.
And at that time, again, like it was kind of a trend, but I think at that time it really just, it was like, we got to deal with this.
I feel
uh,
like at a point, like everybody, I feel like it became a trend because like it was actually a serious problem. So I feel like I noticed a pattern with society is like, you know what, let's try to benefit as much as we can off these things, no matter it being
mm,
positive or no matter it being a negative thing. Like we need to, make money or make business off of this.
yeah,
Um, so in
unfortunately.
terms of like your Indigenous background, I would say I've done like a lot of research in history. And I think it's really sucky to say that, like, in school, I really never was taught anything regarding the Indigenous community aside from, I think there's one main thing that really stood out for me is the residential school experience.
Mm,
Um, in school, that was really the only thing that I learned about the Indigenous community. So with that being said, like, do you ever get like angry sometimes seeing all these things portrayed and you're like, what is going on? Like there are so many other things that we've dealt with that, are not being highlighted. So it's just like, why aren't we talking about these things? Like, how do you feel seeing that?
I mean, listen, I'm only human, right? And I have emotions, of course. Of course. Like I've been filled with rage, and I've been consumed by it. But I think I've gotten to a point where I'm like, you know what? I know my truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've also come to a point now in society where a lot of people are kind of like becoming a little more critical about everything.
Yeah.
So I think like it's going to sound so cliche, but like this idea of trust and just kind of trusting the process and being like, you know what? Like, I know.
Mm-hmm.
And it really comes down to like that awareness, because I know that not a lot of people are there, and that's okay. We're all on our own journey, we're all human. But I think right now what I would say is like just discerning, if we can just be more discerning and wisely critical about
Mhm.
what we're receiving, and if we want to actually subscribe or not,
That's
right?
true.
And you know what I mean, like they both exist, but we don't necessarily need to be on either. We can
That's
just
true.
exist in the middle, because I am a true believer of the truth does not know the frequency of right or wrong. It does not know the polarity of who deserves it and who does not. It just is,
That is so true. Oh my
you
gosh,
know?
that's
So
extremely powerful. Holy smokes. Oh my gosh. Like I lost track of my questions. My gosh.
oh, I love
That's a
that.
phenomenal quote. Thank you so much for that.
You're so
So
welcome.
with that being said, like, do you, because like I'm Black, obviously. So even in my everyday life, I notice little microaggressions that I still have to face. And it
Mm.
doesn't matter how much I dress up, like it doesn't matter how much I try to comb my hair in a different way, like regardless of what I do to try to not to fit in that stereotype, I'm still discriminated against. Do you feel like you go through that same thing?
I definitely feel like there is, yeah, like I think for me, it's mostly like the exoticism, the
Mm,
like fetishizing of like Latinas or like indigenous kind of like Latina culture. That to me, it's I'm gonna say this word, and like I'm very, very, I'm trying to change my life right now by using specific words and being very
mhm.
mindful of the words that I use. And that's also a huge mental health thing, being
Yes.
mindful of our words. And one thing that I will say is like a lot of these microaggressions and the things that still exist, and kind
Mhm.
of even going back to like, indigenous history not being a thing, or
Yeah.
even black history not being a thing,
Yeah.
is oof, it lost me. Oof. No, it didn't. Hold on, it's coming back. It's coming back.
That's
It's
okay.
coming back. It's coming back. Oh gosh, these things happen.
That's okay.
Um
Happens all the time. Do you want me to re-ask the question for you?
yes, please. I think that might help.
Okay, no worries. So like being a Black person or being a person in a minority, you always deal with those little microaggressions on a daily basis. My question was like, do you still find yourself in those situations? And how do you deal with it, kind of thing?
I mean, I definitely, again, like just going back to what I said, like yes, I definitely feel it and I see it. And um I think at this point it's just kind of calling people in.
Yeah.
I again, so words. I don't believe in calling people out. I don't believe in this cancel culture. I believe in calling people in. It's an act of service, because then that allows us again to kind of step into our truth and be
Hmm.
like, "Hey, this is where I'm at. Please don't say this. This is
Hmm.
harmful. It's harmful."
Yeah.
And that's where I was going. I was going with the idea that like there are predatory forces, which is kind of where I'm coming with this like spirituality, mental health being
Mm.
coexisting together. There are predatory forces that do not want us to be the light beings that we are. And so they are going to come in the form of these microaggressions and, the stuff that we see on movies, even to this day. And that's just the truth. So, yeah, I believe like they exist, but I also am not aligned with that frequency. I just
Hmm.
call people in and I let them know, hey, that's harmful. Don't say that, please. Thank you.
That's
And
very
that,
that's very powerful. I like that you used the term calling people in. That's my first time ever hearing like that, anything like that. So I think
interesting.
that's very interesting. Like I like that. It's like what's that word that you would use?
Well, because it's compassionate, right? It's like, hey, listen, like that makes me feel some type of way, but I understand that maybe you don't know, so that's okay. But I'm
Hmm.
letting you know this is my truth. And some people are not ready for that, right? Like
Yeah.
some people are really not ready, and that's okay. Like we just have to remember like this is us, that's
Mm.
them, right? Like, and that's kind of how I see the microaggressions now. I'm like, that's on you, right? Like right now we have the opportunity to really be discerning. So that's not on me. Yeah.
That's insane. That's amazing though. I love that you said that. Leading to the next question, you actually mentioned a lot about media. I noticed that you said obviously in movies too, movies, TV shows, literally anything that's used, like the it's weird, sports teams, anything.
Yeah.
I see a lot of it with like these racist stereotypes of the indigenous community. And it's weird to see because I don't know, it's just so normalized now that it's like it's
Mhm.
not an issue until somebody brings it up and it's just like, guys, this has been an issue for so long. So why do we have to keep talking about it for it to
Mhm.
change kind of thing?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like it's really weird. What can you ever recall like a time in your life where you're just like you felt like you reacted to that or seeing that because it's you just felt overwhelmed to a point and you're just like, you know what, this is happening too much, and you just react. Like, do you ever recall any of that happening?
For sure, definitely. I mean, you know, like it, yeah, you know, even just in my upbringing, like it was difficult to kind of have these conversations because my stepdad is white and does not know about these experiences and like has not had to live them through his own experience. So, you know, even just growing up, like having to constantly feel like I'm justifying or like having to resist and show up and be like, why do I gotta explain this? Right. Like, and this is where I've moved out of the like why to like, this is my truth.
Mhm,
And like, you know, it's up to you if you understand or not. And actually, not even understand, but understand. Like, you know,
mhm.
like integrate into that and really believe it. And we actually recently had a conversation about I think it was a football team that had changed their name. Was it the Chiefs or something?
Yeah. There's the Chiefs, there's the Redskins, there's what else is there?
Right.
But like the top two that I've seen, and I'm just like, after I started reading it, I'm just like, I don't know. You just get so repelled by like, no, so it's just so it's
For
weird.
sure,
But
for sure. And you know
I,
what? Like again, I had this conversation with him and I was like, "Listen, it's like having a football team called the Crackers."
literally,
And
there's
it doesn't make anyone feel good. I don't even like saying that.
yeah,
I don't like saying that. And so I was like, we have to remember that like baby boomers are coming out of places of power. They are being replaced by younger people with younger thoughts and they want this to be accessible to all. It
yeah,
has nothing to do anymore again with the polarities, the sides, like the right and the wrong. It's just like, can we just all enjoy this?
yeah,
And kind of saying that to him allowed him to kind of sit with it. It made him uncomfortable, and it was a very uncomfortable conversation to have because he didn't know how to react. But you know,
yeah. But see, like personally for me, when I have that uncomfortable conversation with people, and I feel like it's not uncomfortable until somebody makes it that way.
this is
Um,
the other thing.
but I've had like conversations with, people that are white, people that are different backgrounds than me. And sometimes it gets weird, but that's only because that person makes it weird because they're still kind of believing in that idea. Like, this person is, they don't really believe what you're saying, nor do they support it. So that's why I feel like sometimes it might get a little uncomfortable because they're like, I hear
Exactly.
you, but I don't really want to like believe you, or I don't really want to side with you kind of thing. Cause
Yeah.
I've been on this mentality for so long and it's done me well. So it's
Hmm.
weird. Um, with
But
that being
that can make people feel dismissed, and that can contribute
said,
to mental health
extremely.
because
I think that actually kind of leads to my next question. Like, I've done so much research and I've just seen so many just big events happening, like Treaty 6, the Indian Act, like just so many things that happened. And I don't know, it's just so weird. Like, how do you not have an understanding of why, a certain group wants to be heard? Because people have been silenced for so long, and it's really uncomfortable, especially in a place that belonged to them to begin with. Like, it's really, really
it's
puzzling.
really ironic. It's really ironic. And I
It
think
is.
that there is something to note about the generational like trauma
Yeah.
that has inevitably been passed down, and that like now a lot of the indigenous and black and just the people of color community that we
Mm-hmm.
have to like now like
We're trying to
make
like fix
sense of
all.
the situation and just be like, okay, I'm that grandchild, I'm going to change this because
Yeah.
clearly it hasn't been working. Um, and like, that's it. I just want to remind everyone that own your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we are like the only beings that possess the ability to love unconditionally. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's really hard when we're dealing with mental health, when you're depressed and anxious, it's so hard to even just love yourself,
Yeah.
And I just want to remind people like we are love. Like we are literally the only beings that can actually love, and we just need to remember that. The more we can remember love,
And the more like we can share it and spread it. It's really easy if you think about it, but I think, humans,
there's
we just make life a lot harder than it should be. It's really
there's a lot of things.
a lot. It's just too
There's a
much.
lot of things, yeah.
Yeah. So I was doing obviously some research, sorry, and I seen a really weird few things that made me really, perk up my ears. So the life expectancy for Indigenous people is 15 years shorter than anybody else that's non-Indigenous.
Well,
That was just a shock to me. Number one, the
yeah.
infant mortality rate is 2 to 3 times higher, and the diabetes rate is 4 times higher,
Mhm.
like 4 times.
Wow. Wow.
Um, do you like, with that being said, do you feel like healthcare or like even your parents, your grandparents, have they really struggled with, even trusting the healthcare or even having a resource where they could get, reasonable healthcare?
I mean, if we're talking specifically about mental health care,
Mm-hmm.
no. Like
No.
for sure no, right? I mean like it exists, but it's like so niche. And no, the resources have not been available. And it's simply because of the patriarchy, colonialism and instilling these systems that have like these very rigorous protocols, and
Ah,
we've been taught out of the fact that we, you know, are not machines. We are like divine breathing beings.
yeah.
And that actually that doesn't upset me, right? Like hearing stats like this, they don't upset me anymore because like I don't even believe in that timeline. Like, I don't even believe in that. I'm like, I believe that my people are like, we're ascending, like we're coming up and like we're coming into rooms. People are
Mm-hmm.
looking at us like it is our time. It is
Yeah.
our time to reclaim what our ancestors couldn't. And this is where again when I'm talking about the generational mental health that comes in because it's
Yeah.
spiritual. It's not just like being depressed and anxious. Like that's capitalism. That's internalized
Yeah.
capitalism and the grind mentality. But it really does get deeper than that. And I think that we are on a come up, and that I will say that those stats can be very shocking and alarming, but our minds are so powerful. And if we can just be like, you know what? Nope, I'm changing that. I
Mm-hmm.
am changing that, and then like really believing it and kind of moving forward with that takes time, a lot of practice, mindfulness,
Yeah.
but it is totally achievable. And I call myself a warrior of light for that reason because I really truly believe in finding the light in all of the shadows. It's I lived in those shadows. I lived there for years, like 95% of my life I lived there. So now when I hear these things, like they don't affect me the way they used to because I
Yeah.
just try to find the light in it. I'm like, okay, cool, let's just come over here.
Mhm.
And kind of like switch up the narrative. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Uh,
mean, facts are I again like I believe in my mind and I believe in the power of the mind, and meditation. That's
mhm.
huge. Honestly, like you can change those stats simply by meditating.
That's true.
We can change our DNA. Bam, right there. we
Oh,
just
seriously,
changed we just changed the stats. Mhm.
the truth. So like kind of my next question, because you were vulnerable and you were open about, suffering from, alcoholism.
Mhm.
I do see a lot of a stereotype, I would say, among the Indigenous community that Indigenous people are really only into alcohol or drug abuse or
Yeah.
just that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Do you feel like you see that problem arise a lot in the Indigenous community, or is it just kind of a stereotype? Because I feel like it's always in every community, but for some reason it's always really highlighted in the
In the
Indigenous community.
indigenous community.
Yeah.
And for me specifically, like coming from Mexico, it's very much like cocaine
Mm,
and like drug trafficking and that kind of
yeah.
stuff. I mean, listen, it's been a huge realization for me. It all comes back to colonization.
Mm,
We were colonized, and so therefore new systems were brought into place, and we forgot who we were,
yeah.
and we had to adapt. And because of that adaptability, there now systems created classes, and people start forgetting again. Like we just forget, and now the only thing that we chase is money.
Yeah.
And the only way to cope that is accessible is alcohol
Mhm.
or really crappy food.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that are killing my people, our people. And like it was very difficult for me because I ate McDonald's every day, maybe sometimes 3 times a day, and I drank every single day.
Mhm.
And that's because I was considered low income, la la la, like all these like boxes, right? These labels, really, they are non-existent. They don't exist.
Mhm.
But that's also a choice. I've chosen not to exist in those boxes. But yeah, like to just kind of go back to that, it is a stereotype, unfortunately. It
Yeah.
really is, and it does affect here in Canada. It affects the Indigenous community so much because it's almost like they don't it's not almost. They don't know anything else.
No. Yeah.
Like we all need to kind of realize they don't even know what it's like to not be drunk or sober. How sad is that? How sad is it that society has deprived humans of their ability to feel joy?
Mhm.
It
It's
it's a
it's scary.
It is
It's really,
scary. It's harmful. This is going back to the predatory forces that want to consume our ability to be sovereign light beings. And the way that we kind of break these systems and these stigmas is with our minds,
yeah.
and actually acting upon it, like not just going on autopilot and liking and reposting and
Hmm. Exactly.
mindlessly doing this. It's not that. It's being intentional. It's like being like walking down the street and you see an indigenous person, go get them something to eat and a bottle of water, and like don't even ask. It's those types of things. It's just kind of showing up now, um, because we all have a choice. We all have a choice now to kind of change history,
Hmm.
and
And
I
what's
think, yeah, exactly. So,
um
mhm.
yeah, it needs to happen definitely for sure. So on to my next question. It kind of stems from what you say now, and this is kind of what I realized and what I concluded. So the Indian Act was around up until like 1961, and I researched that a part of that act, like they kind of told they did tell indigenous people that your ceremonies were no longer allowed, just like certain rules were implemented.
Mhm.
And I think it's really weird to like read that and understand that. And then, we're in a society today where
It's a trend.
saging is like a trend, and it's like we say saging but it's actually smudging, like it's a smudging ceremony that is very sacred, and a lot
Mhm.
of people don't really understand that. So I think it's really backwards, just to see how society has kind of taken away your rights and then
Mhm.
kind of, how would you say, like,
So I know exactly what you're trying to say, and what it
yeah,
is our culture has been recycled and sold back
yes,
to us,
exactly,
at
exactly.
expensive rates, I will say,
Yep.
that are not sustainable.
Hmm.
They, this is getting into the whole appreciation versus appropriation. Um, Yeah, I mean, like, there's been so much that's been stolen. Stolen sisters, stolen land, stolen spirituality,
Yeah.
stolen stories, right? Like,
Uh,
all of these things are becoming now selling points.
mhm,
And, that, like, I want to make it very clear that those who are still a part of that frequency, they are
mhm.
contributing to a harmful narrative. They are contributing to a narrative that is predatory.
Yeah.
So, what I would like to say to all, is like, if you resonate with spiritual practices, there is nothing wrong with instead buying incense,
Yeah.
learning the history of incense. Incense is incredibly powerful. I work with it very closely in my practice and in the work that I offer to others. But yes, I think we need to really kind of be very clear. And this is the whole calling people in.
Mhm.
I'm not singling anyone out. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. It's not about that. We're not here to feel guilty. It's about how we choose to intentionally move past this and
Yes.
recognize that that is what it is, and this is why I don't buy into certain companies.
Hmm.
I'm very, very transparent about, like, not purchasing certain things, or understanding that, like, if it resonates, that's totally okay, but explain why, and be very, very aware of where it's coming from. And, because that's just our culture is just recycled and being sold back to us. And these are the things that kept us as sovereign,
Exactly.
mentally clear beings, and we were stripped of that. And that is no longer right. And, like, I'm just calling people in and reminding y'all, this this is the reality. Like, please don't, please don't do this. It's harmful. Just walk beside us.
Yes,
Just walk
definitely.
beside us. That's it,
Yeah,
right?
I definitely agree. I think history just needs to be like rerouted and planted again because realistically, a lot of things that we are taught in school has no relevance to anything really. It's so funny because I watched like a video on YouTube and it was just a bunch of indigenous people answering a question like, how do you feel when you hear the word when you hear the name Christopher Columbus?
Mm.
And just, yeah, like just some of the reactions that I seen, I was like, wow, like this is so powerful. And a lot of people weren't even really saying anything, just like from the facial expressions, the first initial facial expression that you see is like,
Yo.
wow, there's just so much trauma in that name itself that it's like, it brings, like I've seen people crying and I'm like, wow, this is,
Mm-hmm.
it's insane. It's
Mm-hmm.
really sad to hear, but these people are the ones that are highlighted throughout our history that have done the most the most
Exactly.
damage.
And then we just think of how many of our grandmothers and grandfathers had to hear this and put it back, put it back, put it back, put it back. You come all the way down the line, and here we are.
Yeah.
We're talking about this, and we're like, no more.
Yeah.
Like, because that has been contributing to my mental health.
Mhm.
Because my great, great, great grandfathers and grandmothers had to deal with that. That
Yeah.
is mental health awareness. We have to remember, like, we come from somewhere. So when we
Hmm.
remember where we come from, we know where we're going.
Yeah.
Mental clarity, right? We come back to our rituals, we come back to our ceremonies, and we
Mhm.
reclaim them, and we tell the white folks, stop selling this to us.
Yeah.
This is what makes me feel good. This is what makes me feel sovereign again. It's
Hmm.
mine, right? So we just got to reclaim and non-attach, like
Reclaim,
non-attachment.
reclaim, and non-attach. That's two very solid things that people need. I think anybody really,
Anyone,
yeah,
we all of
reclaim
us.
and detach. That's a really good part.
Mhm.
I like that. So we kind of answered the question, my next question. What do you think needs to happen in our society in order for reconciliation to happen?
I mean, again, it's like it's people just kind of being humble and knowing that they matter, right? Like, I want everyone to know right now, we all matter. All of us.
Yeah.
Like, all of us. Even the plants, even the stones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the fin, the furred,
Yeah.
we all matter. we are all related.
Yeah.
And the more we remember that, the more we remember our unconditional love, our ability to love, that is power. That is powerful. We can transcend history, we can transcend everything, and we can, with our minds, create a new world where we are all mentally healthy,
Mm.
and we're sovereign, and we know, and we are discerning. um, so I feel like in order for us to really get there, people again just need to be humble, remember that we're all the same,
Mm.
and that we all matter, and that we we literally all have the answers.
Yeah.
So that's really it. Like, forgive yourself. Like forgiving ourselves for hurting ourselves, for
Mm-hmm.
hurting others, for being hurt.
Yeah.
When we can really embody forgiveness, all of the things that I just said are,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of align, because they all kind of need each other.
Yeah.
So I think I would just say forgive yourself, and if it means anything, I forgive you.
Mm.
I really do. I mean that, right? Like, I forgive you. So, you know, and I love you. So that's it, right? Like, that's how I think
Sometimes
we can change it.
it's really weird to say. Well, not weird. It's normal. I feel like sometimes,
Mhm.
especially within our society today, I think pride has really overcome and overshadowed a lot of like our human characteristics and
Mhm.
abilities. And
Yeah.
it's really sad to say, but like my mom, well, my parents have always taught me, like, pride and envy, shame, all those things that you feel, like those are usually the devil kind of finding its way in your mind.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to overuse love and just all those good and positive
Mhm.
habits to really overcome those thoughts and stuff. But definitely, you are just preaching today, girl. I love it.
That's what I do. This is what I'm here to do. That's it. I'm just showing up.
Yeah, as you should. So I kind of realized that reserves were actually brought about by like Treaty 6 around that time, when like Canadian police start to like force people into like areas and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, do you really feel like, because I personally didn't know that before, do you
Mm.
feel like a lot of Indigenous people are actually aware of a lot of the history that, has gone on within the community?
I think they do. So a lot of them, I mean, we're all wisdom keepers.
Yeah.
And they for sure, they carry that wisdom,
Mhm.
and that's something that just kind of gets passed down. And it may not even be like that they know specifically like this happened on this date and this time. They
Yeah.
know the feelings attached to that. They know the feelings.
Hmm.
So they know because of their, and it's a reflection in their mental health. It's a
Yeah.
reflection in the way they live, we live, right? Like, I'm a part of that as well, and I have just kind of broken out of it. And takes a lot of work. It's active work.
Hmm.
But yeah, it does. I definitely feel like it's something that has been passed down in terms of like feeling, because it's
Yeah.
biological and it gets stored in our DNA. And a solution to that, just going back, meditation.
Meditation.
5 minutes of meditation every day, it can change
Yeah.
your DNA. So, but yes, to answer your question,
Hmm.
I feel like they have the awareness and feeling. Some are more active, like actively in protest, and are very, very well read people. We have to remember, like, there are people who are not the stereotype and that are out here really learning and trying to better themselves in their community. So
Yeah.
I think both exist, and I think both need to exist for the other to exist.
That's true.
Just to get a little deep there. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true
Hmm.
though. It's really
Yeah.
true. Um,
Hmm.
what do you feel about, a lot of, like, do you feel like there's enough being shared in the media or just in general about, women going missing in the Indigenous community? Or do you, like, sometimes personally, because I'm a journalist, so
Hmm.
I'm always in the news and stuff, and I feel like a lot of stories like that the Canadian government doesn't want to like expose too much,
Yeah.
they will kind of take advantage of, let's speak about this right now for a little bit, and then it dies down a little bit. I noticed that trend a lot. Do you feel like there needs to be more, like, do you feel like people need to share more about that, or like the conversation needs to be brought up more? Because I feel like a lot of people do generally forget about, the females and the women that have lost their lives, still been missing, and, been affected by that.
1000%. 1000%. I definitely feel we need to be talking about it, because, uh, yeah, I mean, women in indigenous cultures, universally, I don't even want to just stay to indigenous, like, we are all indigenous, and universally, women are creation. Like, we are divine beings. If you identify as a woman, if you have a womb,
Mm-hmm.
powerful, like powerful. And there are many things that I could talk about, but to talk about it in its surface is like, yes, we do need to talk about it, because it comes down to the man camps where mining companies are literally raping Mother Earth, and those men are then going and killing and raping indigenous women. And actually, sometimes they're indigenous men. They have been so polluted in their minds with alcoholism and mental health crisis, to the point where they're the ones that are literally raping Mother Earth and also doing that to their women.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not specific to a certain man or anything. And
Mm-hmm.
again, like, I should have said trigger warning. I know I'm dropping a lot of really heavy things.
That's
Uh,
okay. We'll put it in the caption, don't worry.
and it's just, I really want to normalize these conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and make people feel like I hear you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I literally hear you, because I feel it. I feel it when I speak to Mother Earth in meditation, and when I ask her for guidance. I feel it. She just wants us to say sorry.
Yeah.
And that starts with men upholding women to the point where we need to be. And
Mm-hmm.
indigenous women is specifically because they are protectors of water.
Yeah.
Without water, I need to remind us all, without fresh cleaning water, we do not exist. We can live without food. We can live without food, but we
Mm-hmm.
cannot live without water. And indigenous women specifically are water protectors. That is their role, especially in Canadian indigenous communities.
Mm-hmm.
Women are water protectors. They are, if you see them, if you see anything right now going on about water, who are the people in the front lines? Women. It is all women. It's matriarch. And we need to be talking about them, because,
Mm-hmm.
again, like, they are only like 13% of the world's population, and they stand up for more than 88% of the environmental crisis that is happening everywhere. It is not exclusive to here,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere in the world. So, yes, we do need to be talking of our missing and murdered Indigenous sisters, because without women, there is no life. Without women, there is no water. And water is the blood of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, mhm, yeah.
That's so deep. Didn't know that women are the water protectors.
Mhm.
That's so deep. I love that. You just
Yeah,
always,
I mean, April Pellissier, she
yeah.
won the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, she was 16 when she won it, and she is a water protector from Quebec. She's from here, from Canada. So, yeah, it is very important that we talk about Indigenous women,
Mhm.
because powerful beings, we are, women in general are powerful beings, but in terms of, like, systemically, uh,
Yeah.
we need to be talking about Indigenous women. Yes,
Yeah, because
for
those are
sure.
the first women that walked like the earth and here. So
And tended to it,
yes.
and they are the wisdom keepers. They are the protectors of our water. Like, yeah, 1000%. We need to be speaking on their behalf. Hmm.
I really like that you brought up the word water actually, because today you probably seen I posted a video on my Instagram about like the water that comes out of the pipes and on reserves.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This is like there are so many subtle ways that like the Canadian government will just try to really, wipe out people that they've been trying to wipe out for so long. And I think more and more it's becoming more evident, but if people really don't have the knowledge, nor do they really, look at these videos like in depth, then they're really not going to understand where it's coming from.
Hmm.
Um, but it's so scary.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. That
Yeah.
the non and if we want to talk about indigenous mental health, right? If they are
Mhm.
not able to have access to clean drinking water,
Like
how are they going to be clear
that's
in
I,
general?
I don't know. It just
How,
water itself, like the
just
basic
water.
necessity of life, water. And it's really weird. And in such like Canada, in a place where,
We
you
are
know,
literally surrounded by lakes.
it doesn't make any sense.
It
It
doesn't make
really,
any sense. And
really.
also I want to also point out the idea of scarcity. Like
Yes.
scarcity in itself like is a huge mental health trigger.
Mm,
Right? Like in the indigenous community, like being
yeah.
told consistently, like scarcity, you don't have enough, you will never have enough. Here's this little thing, here's no water, here's this, here's that. Scarcity makes people feel so damn small.
Mm.
And that's what it comes down to.
And it's so weird because like I don't know, before like, white people really started to take over the land, native people and indigenous people were the ones, making all the crops and taking care of the land and all that stuff. So it's just like if things were going so well for so long, why on earth did you guys just come around to mess it up? It's I don't know. But then again, at the end of the day, I've realized a lot of things are really money driven. And that's what I realized. Like historically,
It's
they
all
trick
about money.
yeah, like it's all about how can we make an income out of this, or how can we make something from this that leads to money, or it's just always about money in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
um and it's really
Greed.
sad to say, but the Canadian
Greed,
government is
right?
corrupt for
I'm
decades,
just agreeing
Eddie,
with you.
just decades. Like no, seriously, reading up on the like Treaty 6, the fact that if
Whew.
anyone doesn't know about it, Treaty 6 was basically um an agreement between two parties, the native people and the colonizers, I would say,
Mhm.
that they would be able to, what was it, plant and like plow and like use the land in
Yes.
order for native Indians to get like basically human rights. So like the
Hmm.
right to vote, like the right
Hmm.
to do anything basically. And while they were doing that, the Canadian government was kind of like, oops, it's like, gotcha. We
Yeah.
actually don't want to give you anything, and started forcing them to live on reserves. So that's where reserves really came from.
Mhm.
So when I started seeing stuff like that, I'm like, wow, so the government's just been like this for so long.
And I mean, like, I want to also remind everyone that I want you all to think about truly how much does the government care about you?
Yeah.
That's my only question. I don't
Yeah.
care what your life of path is, what color skin you have. Does the government really care about you?
Mm,
Because look at
it's
the way it's treating indigenous people,
mm.
the people who literally are from this land. Look at how it's treating them. Look at how
Yeah,
it's
like
treating black people. Look
guys
at how
came
it's.
to see them here, and then you're telling them, oh, you can't do this, we're going to do this, we're taking you away, like you have to go learn at a residential school, like and just those videos, guys, prepare if you do want to look into it. Definitely, I would definitely advise it, but
Mhm.
just mentally prepare yourself, because like
Mhm.
it's extremely triggering.
It's extremely triggering, but I will say that it is necessary. I think at this
Yeah,
point, it's
it's
necessary that we all know. Hmm.
definitely. And like I think it's really the cherry on top. Like the residential school experience is really just a cherry on top. Like if you really want to know about history, go way before that, because there are just so many things that were done that were just, oh my goodness, what are we doing?
Hmm.
What are
I
we
mean,
doing?
going back to the whole missing murdered indigenous women, the
Yeah,
first missing indigenous woman was Pocahontas.
yeah,
If people want to read about that's a real story. Well, she wasn't one of the first, but she's one of the first documented, right?
yeah.
Because they were taken from here as brides and sold in England as like circus animals. So,
It's
and very similar to Black history, right?
mm,
It's we see the predatory force.
Yeah.
It's trying to take away our cultures, trying to take away our medicines. And then what do we see now? We're in 2021 and it's being what? Recycled and sold back to us. Well, hey, guess what? No, no,
Mhm.
no. I think it's a huge wake up call for a lot of people. And, it's like, hey, if you feel uncomfortable, that's cool. Sit in that discomfort.
But it's
This
like,
is.
for me, when I'm really trying to learn about something and I find myself a little bit uncomfortable, I also feel like I need to do that healing within myself to find out why I'm uncomfortable. Like,
Yes,
what is really,
that's a good point.
yeah, like why do I feel like I'm triggered when sometimes it really doesn't have anything to do with me, but then I'm still like upset about it. So it's just
Exactly.
like, in terms of like you or anybody doing that, like realistically find out why it's still an issue for you or why you might be so offended by it
Hmm.
personally.
Yeah.
Um, but definitely take a look at all history for sure, because you're not going to find it in Canadian history books for
No,
sure.
unfortunately, not at this time.
No.
In the future, yes, it's happening, it's shifting, it's changing, but it's going to take a minimum 10 years. Like, we have to
Yeah.
be realistic with systems, and it takes some time, but it's happening. And again, it's a choice. So, hey, you choose to do it. If there is discomfort, you know, that's okay.
Hmm.
It's okay. And you're so right. Like, being able to kind of be like, why, you know?
Yeah.
That's a really good journaling prompt, by the way. Just
Oh,
consistently asking ourselves like why? Why,
why?
why, why? Just why? Why? And then you'll really get to the root. You really will. You'll start to notice that you kind of start tunneling into like boom. Oh, that's
This,
why. Yeah. Oh, I can't hear you. What happened?
oh,
Oh, there we go. I can hear you now. Mhm.
okay, good. Sometimes I've noticed even on my personal healing journey that sometimes it doesn't even have anything to do with me, really. It's more generational trauma that like my parents and my grandparents, I've seen over and over again. I'm just like, it's so normal that
Mhm.
they kind of act like it's okay, but I really know it's not. So it's just
Mhm.
like, but you have to understand, like, once you become the first generation to start really, making changes, your whole family is going to look at you weird, like really weird, because you're just
Yeah,
doing what they weren't doing or what they weren't ready to do. So it's not normal for them.
exactly.
So if you are a person that's in your family and you're trying to break generational curses, just stay dedicated, because it's not going to be
Mhm.
easy, but it'll be worth it for sure. But that's like also what I wanted to say, that in order for things to change and continue changing, I think we need to, like, this generation, our generation, I think we're the beginning of the change for sure.
Mhm.
But we also have to make sure our kids and, our kids, we
Mhm.
have that mentality that is instilled in them, that they don't forget this when, they might go to school when they're hanging out with their friends and,
Yep.
they start laughing at weird things or might think something's funny because it looks different. Like, we have to start, being more aware of what we say and like how it might affect people for sure.
100%.
So lastly, Andrea, thank you so much for coming. But for everyone that's watching this interview, what is something that you want them to really take from this?
Um, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that your journey is you would be very surprised to know that your journey is a literal mirror of probably my journey and
Mm-hmm.
probably someone else's journey and so on and so forth. We are all mirrors of each other.
Yeah.
You have the answers within you. I know society has convinced you and told you and taught you otherwise, but that's not true. You have all the answers within you. And if at any point in time you've had this feeling of there has to be something more, this is your sign that there is.
Yeah.
There is something more than, um, you know, filters on Instagram and Snapchat and the Kardashians. There is so much more. There is so much more. Drink water every day. If you can, meditate for 5 minutes in the morning and at night, or just one time a day, just 5 minutes to be with you. Because then you'll see the answers. You will literally show yourself the answers. So that's what I would love for everyone to take away. And also that history is just that.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we are living our story,
Yeah.
not that. We're living our story now. And again, like we are powerful, powerful beings. Our minds are so powerful. So, yeah, just meditate, drink lots of water, and, like, not to plug myself or anything, but I do work in this, and I love guiding people to find their own light. By sharing my experiences. I love being vulnerable. So just also that embrace your vulnerability. You know,
Yes.
even if that's just with you to begin, just do it with you, and then it'll kind of trickle out.
Yeah,
I know that
you're
was
definitely
bland, but you know.
honestly, being vulnerable shows your strength because you're able to just show all parts of yourself. So,
Oh,
I agree.
yes. There's something so powerful about people who are vulnerable and honest and human.
Yeah, human. That's an amazing word. I think we all forget that we're human.
We're divine breathing human beings.
Definitely we are. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about, mental health in the Indigenous community. It was a pleasure speaking with you, Andrea.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Lev, and have a good night.
Thank you.
It's like, let me stop.